On today's episode of Two Guys Talking Sports, me and Steven break down the South Carolina Gamecocks' big win over the Texas A&M Aggies, and we also get into a disappointing night for the Clemson Tigers. Is Dabo's or Clemson fans' patience wearing thin with Dabo? Tune in to find out. Welcome back to another episode of Two Guys Talking Sports. Doing a little bit differently this week since I wanted to be selfish and go to the Panthers-Saints game.
It worked out for you.
Our live episode on Sunday. So we're going to do a little different. We're recording in the morning time and going to have it out in the afternoon sometime. So, Stephen, let's get right into it. South Carolina hosting Texas A&M this past weekend. Texas A&M coming off a huge win over LSU, and really it was just a dominating fashion. I didn't really know what to expect coming into South Carolina, and one thing you harp on a lot is how we come out of a bye week, right. And really it was just a great game. So before we get into it, I'm gonna let you give your thoughts on it, then I'll give my thoughts on it.
Yeah, like you said, biggest thing for me is always how you coming out of a bye week. And that's really for any team, any sport that I follow or watch. You just never know how teams respond whenever they get out of their routine. We've talked about that, especially football it's all routine. You do the same thing on Monday, the same thing on Tuesday. It's all the same. And then when you have a bye week and you want to give your players a little bit of extra rest and stuff like that to try and get healthy, so they kind of messes with that routine. We saw it not work well in our first bye. We come out of the bye and you come into Ole Miss, you got a big game, it's at home, all the hype, and they were just completely flat. So we talked about it after the last game. I think it was who did we play before? Oklahoma, yes. So you have that big win against Oklahoma, then you had to bye. And I said, anything that we did this past bye, do the exact opposite. If you practice in the morning, practice at night. If you had chicken every day for lunch, have steak. Just do everything different. And obviously it looks like that's what they did, because they came out, beautiful script coming out the gate offensively. Defense is, just is what it has been all year, just stellar. But overall, they pretty much dominated this game.
Yeah, and one thing, like we said, you never really know what South Carolina team you're going to get. Is it the team you're going to see that you saw against Old Dominion and Ole Miss, or is it the team we saw against LSU for majority of the first half until Sellers got hurt? Is it the team we're going to see, at least from the offensive side of the ball? You know what you're going to get from the defensive side of the ball. And really and truthfully, I think there's speculation who's calling the plays. I don't know. But at least on paper and on television, Dow Loggins is the offensive coordinator. Yeah. And I think top to bottom, first quarter, first snap, fourth quarter, last snap was the best game he's called in his short tenure here at South Carolina. And, one thing I saw, it's easy to go when you have your script. Now, how many ever plays that is, it's unknown, but it's making those adjustments when that script runs out and and taking what the defense has given you. And you have to give a ton of credit to Lenore Sellers, and also our offensive line, especially in the running game. The running game was just absolutely insane. Saturday night. We had 286 yards rushing. And Rocket Sanders, outside his fumble in the first quarter, I think really played an excellent game. And you're seeing Lenore Sellers continue to grow. The way he was able to escape from the pocket when the protection collapsed Saturday night was very impressive for a true freshman. I don't know what it is, but I feel like Texas A&M just couldn't tackle at all. I can't find the stat on it, but
they had over 20 missed tackles.
They had several missed tackles.
4 or 5 of them should have been sacks that Lenore's got out of, and that was the key to the offense, because there was a lot of times when the drives could have completely stalled because of a sack, but he was able to get out of it, make a play, get a first down, or able to extend the drive just from them not being able to tackle him.
Yeah,
And he
exactly.
may be one of the bigger quarterbacks that they faced this year, where most of them, if you just, like a Nussmeier or somebody like that, if you just pop
Yeah.
them real good, they're going to go down. Where Lenore's, I mean, he's a big old boy,
Yeah.
and for them to just try and hit them once and knock them down, he's just not that type of guy.
Yeah, and kind of going back to Dow, I really think he just did a great job of play calling where he took what the defense was giving them, and they were gung ho on blitzing a lot all night, and he utilized Joshua Simon a ton in those little short, it's like it's a 2 or 3 yard pass beyond the line of scrimmage, and they were turning into 40, 50, 60 yard passes, and that was, I really think, the game changer. And then our defense just making the adjustments, or honestly, our entire team and coaching staff making the adjustments. I think I made the comment to you before halftime is we really have I felt like at the time we had a very inexperienced coaching staff where this is very similar. It was almost like the same script for the LSU game where we get out to a hot start, 14-0, and then it's just something changes. Or I don't know if it's, we knew it was going to be a close game because Texas A&M is a solid football team where they weren't just going to bow down. They weren't going to go away. They were eventually going to start chipping away at that lead. And I mean, we went into halftime tied at 20-20, and the adjustments Beamer and company made was really stand out for me, and it showed what we are capable of. We just have to do it on a consistent basis.
It seems like too, and you mentioned it earlier, that the play calling, we're not sure if it's still logins or if it's a mix. I want to say that it's probably a mix. I want to say that it seems like that there's a lot more input into the play calling because something has changed in the last few weeks. It was a lot better against Oklahoma. We even said it against Oklahoma. Like that was probably his best, play calling that he's done. And then we come into this week, and now this is probably the best play calling he's done. It seems like they've either figured out the best way to work this offense with the offensive line, with our running backs, the receivers that we have. It's either that or someone else is helping a lot more with the play calling, or probably a combination of both. They probably just figured out, okay, this is the best way for us to do this. And that's probably coming from the input of, and his name's kind of slipping my mind now. He was the OC
Shula.
with the Panther. Yeah, with Shula. And saying, hey, look, this is the style of offense that we should be running with the type of quarterback that we have. Let's just tailor it towards that. And it seems like they have. They're not asking him to do too much. The running game has been a lot better. Obviously, coming in, they said Sanders is probably the healthiest that he's been, in years. And you could tell, I mean, just the way that he was running, the way they were using him in, the passing game, the way that, I mean, he had 92 yards receiving. So, he was, all over the field. The ability to pass block, that's a big thing too. Also, Oscar Attaway, he doesn't get as many carries, but I saw a lot of clips that they posted where just him in pass protection, just chipping those defensive ends, just giving that one little chip that buys you 1.5 to 2 seconds. That's huge. And there was multiple times when he comes in there and you don't really notice it, but he just chips that guy for 2 seconds, and that changes the play completely.
Yeah, kind of going what you said about the offense. I think it's very similar to the way it was with Satterfield. And I know Beamer loves the offensive, or excuse me, like the pro style offense, and it's all good in theory. But another thing is they are very complicated offenses where it's like a play call is like almost 3 sentences.
Right.
And in college, like, yes, these are athletes, they get paid whatever you want to call it, but this is a completely different game than what the NFL is, where in the NFL, these are grown adults who, from whatever time they get into the facility to the time they go home, it's all related to football. These are student athletes.
Yeah.
They don't spend all day in the film room or whatever. They're in class. And like what happened with Satterfield is Beamer told them, like, pick your 50 best plays, and then we're going to condense it down from there. And then we're going to focus on getting our best players on the field. None of these stupid packages where so and so is going to be on the field and so is not going to be on the field. So it's just not dumbing it down, but it's making it as simple as possible, and just go out and let your playmakers make plays.
Yeah,
It's that
it's a,
simple. And I feel like hopefully we start to see it more like this, because we see it like we saw against LSU, and then last Saturday, this past Saturday against Texas A&M, but then we could very well look like we did against Ole Miss.
yeah.
So it's being able to take that, what happened on Saturday, and consistently do it. So hopefully it does happen, because we saw what this offense is capable of, and I feel like the offensive line did a better job run blocking, creating holes. I don't know. It was just a different game than what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be a low scoring game.
And as much as you want to have a pro style offense, it's pretty much just going away. I mean, you have maybe 10 to 15 quarterbacks in the NFL now that still run that type, and you can kind of see that even these younger quarterbacks, right? Because in college now, like nobody in high school, it's dual threat, and they're running this college style offense. We thought it was going to happen a lot quicker when you had these dual threat quarterbacks, especially in the NFL. We thought with Cam Newton, like that was going to be the style.
Yeah,
it's getting there now, because you finally got this influx of college quarterbacks in high school. This is what everybody runs. So they're not used to, and especially if you're going to say, all right, we're going to start a freshman or a true freshman, or maybe a sophomore, you can't come in where they're running 5 to 6 word plays in high school and then give them a 3-sentence play. It's going to take forever for them to learn that. Now you have somebody like Spencer Rattler, who he was also one of those quarterbacks who, when he went to camps in high school, that's kind of what they were teaching. They were going to these pro style camps. So you have him with Satterfield, and you can kind of run that type of offense. You just can't do it now. None of these kids are prepared for that. And even whenever you try and teach it to them, it's going to take years. Now, if you had a veteran guy like Rattler, but then you had another one behind him who had been there for 2 or 3 years to learn your offense, those types of offense take years to learn. It's not something that you can just plug somebody in. Even a transfer from a portal guy, you can't just plug that in to that type of offense. Now, the 5-6 play where you're just running a scheme and maybe words are changing, you can plug that in. But that's kind of going away, and I think that they've realized that now. I mean, even moving forward after Sellers, you're not going to have a pro style quarterback come in. So it's just it's one of those things.
You're seeing quarterbacks are more athletic. Another thing I was happy about on Saturday was our field goals. Didn't miss a field goal. But I think we put Herrera in better positions. Where you rewind a little bit back to the Alabama game, where I think it was mostly on coaching and the decisions they were making leading up to those field goals, where we know the range he's comfortable in, so we need to try to get him in that range. And I feel like they had a sense, especially towards the end of the first half, where we went down 2017 when we allowed the touchdown right before halftime, and we were able to move the ball, and we got help with the one can argue, was it a pass interference call? I don't know. Or was it holding? It's you can argue both ways. Like I swear, I think a referee can call holding on every play.
Every play.
Now it's more adamant when you have like a Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, where they're getting clotheslined. But being able to move the ball the way we did at the end of the first half to set up a field goal for Herrera to tie it up was really telling for me. And then the adjustments, like we said earlier, that the coaching staff made, we shut out Texas A&M in the second half, and I feel like A&M's offense kind of not went into panic mode, but when their star running back got hurt in the first quarter, I think it really changed the way they call, because Marcel Reed is not a true, he's more of a runner than a thrower, but you can't keep doing what they were doing in the first half the entire game. Good defenses are going to make adjustments, and I feel for the most part our defense did, and we always know our defense is going to make adjustments. Like, they're not going to keep get beating, at least this season, keep getting beat on the same plays.
Yeah.
Outside that big offensive run in the second quarter, where it really felt like that momentum swing changed. They did a great job of kind of limiting those big plays.
Yeah. And also it's the fact that the offense didn't leave them out there. And we talked about that a lot, especially in Oklahoma, where we jumped out to the big lead, but then it was like the offense couldn't really do much. And so our defense was out there.
Yeah.
And you could just see, like, okay, if this continues, like they're going to be able to chip away and come back.
Yeah.
And it would have been the same thing with Texas A&M, but I think now the offense was able to string along better drives. We talked about it too, is like you want to get your running back into a groove. So feed him the ball. Same thing with the passing game. And I mentioned it as it's the same thing for the offensive line. You got to let them know, like, okay, we got a 3-yard run. That builds confidence for them, knowing, okay, we're blocking good today. So when they block a little bit better and a little bit better, and then that opens up the passing game. So the fact that the offense didn't leave our defense on the field a lot to allow Texas A&M to chip away, because no matter how good your defense is, even though we're barely as good as Nicholls' defense,
According to some people. I'll give her credit. She ate her crow on Saturday night.
Yeah. Even with a top 15, top 10 defense, if you leave them out there all game, eventually an offense is going to score. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. Especially when you're playing big, physical, tough teams.
Yeah.
That defense is eventually going to wear down if they're just consistently on the field. And you saw that in the LSU game. You saw it in the Ole Miss game. And it doesn't have to be where you're not going to score every drive. Like, I feel like
everything is getting 2 or 3 first downs, being able to punt the ball and flip the field. It's so much better than a 3 and out. And especially like if, a team scores and you have a 3 and out, that just sends your defense right back out there. But if they score, you're able to put together 2 or 3 first downs, give them a breather, give them a chance to say, hey, what went wrong on this drive? Let's fix this. Because if you have a 3 and out, they don't even have time to make adjustments from the last drive. So even if you don't score, like you said, just being able to burn some time, flip the field a little bit, I mean, it's not going to go down as some stellar thing in the scorebook, but it helps your defense out a lot.
Yeah, and let's give a ton of credit to all the fans there that were at Williams-Brice. I think, going back a couple of years and, this year, Beamer's 4th year, Williams-Brice in a night game when the teams playing like they did against like a Tennessee in 2022, and then Texas A&M this past Saturday, that place is rocking, and it's one of the toughest environments in college football to play in my opinion, at nighttime.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know if this might just be a me thing, but I feel playing at an afternoon game, like a day game, like a 12 o'clock in a tough environment is very different than a 7:30, 8 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're just as rowdy as they could have been. I feel like rushing the field is just kind of watered down now. Like it's not as special anymore, where if you just beat a ranked opponent, it's people are rushing the field. We're doing what Clemson does. They lose to Louisville and they still run on the field after the game.
Yeah.
And I know that's their tradition and everything, but I feel every time you beat a ranked opponent, I feel it's nothing special anymore. I don't know. I might be in the minority on that.
Whatever. I don't care either way on rushing the field. I think that it's more dangerous than anything, but
you look at, especially when the opposing team is on the field, because, and you saw this, I think it was Saturday with Jason Kelsey, where, these fans think they are untouchable and can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want to these athletes and these, famous people, whatever you want to label them as, and think there's going to be no repercussions. And I'm just waiting for something to happen like that, because there was a video where I think it was at our game after the game, where it may have been a student was atoning an offensive lineman for A&M, and he just, that was a big boy.
Yeah, that's not when
you could just, and these are still kids.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for something like that to happen, because then they'll never be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And whether you agree with it being right or wrong, it's just, it's going to happen sooner or later. especially with these college kids thinking they're untouchable, can do whatever they want to, and not expect anything to happen.
Yeah.
So, but a big win for the Gamecocks and Beamer. We finally got over that hump. We had the disappointing loss against LSU. We had the disappointing loss against Alabama. Those two games, looking back, is probably games we should have won.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that shows you the sign of a good football team, where when we could have just bowed out when Texas A&M tied the game up or took the lead late in the second quarter, but they stuck to it and did not give up and came out and dominated in that second half. And I think that
Yep.
shows you how good of a football team we do have. We're 4-3, 3-3 in the SEC. Excuse me, 5-3, 3-3 in the SEC play. And we've mentioned this in previous episodes, but looking at the schedule we had before the season started, with all the question marks we had on offense, not knowing what the defense was going to be, for us to be here at 5-3 after 8 games.
Yep. Most people,
is impressive.
including myself, probably would have thought 3-5 right now.
Most people were saying we may not even get to 4 wins
Right.
this year. And the fact that we're 1 win away from being bowl eligible, which, with the expanded playoff, the bowl eligibility is not what it used to be.
Yeah. The big thing for bowls now is just you get that extra month with your team, especially the younger guys that might not see as much action.
Yeah.
And then you can also get in some of those early enrollees, at least for a week or so, get them in, and just even if they don't practice, they can just be there.
Yeah. I'm just talking from like the fan perspective, where when we were younger, when I remember going to the Outback Bowl the second year South Carolina played Ohio State. And I think that would have been technically 2002.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was the Outback Bowl, Ohio State at Raymond James Stadium. The stadium was sold out. I mean, it was packed. And then now you look at these games, and even going to the Outback Bowl, where they barely even sell out the upper deck anymore. And I know with technology changing and everything, it's going completely different. But it just these games don't really, at least from a national perspective, these games don't really mean anything anymore. So, but anyways, South Carolina victorious over top 10 team. Go ahead.
You got any complaints from the game? I mean, as good as games go, you always got something you say, hey, we need to, why do we do this? Because I got a few.
Do you? Hold on. You go ahead. Let me think on it.
My first one is, and this isn't a big deal, and I think that it was talked about to him during the game, is Lenore Sellers sliding on third downs. He's done it multiple times this year, and I get the sliding. I'm all for quarterback sliding on first and second downs, but there was one, he's running the ball, he slides a yard short, and that puts us at 4th and 1 instead of just leaning forward and diving, and you get the first down. And he's done it multiple times this year. And I think that they even talked about it on the broadcast, and I can't remember who was the actual
it was
might have been Greg
McElroy.
Yeah, so McElroy said it. He was like, look, you slide any other time except for third downs and touchdowns. Like if you got a chance to get a first down in this third and you're on a third down play, you do not slide. You dive, you do whatever you can to get the first down. Same thing with a touchdown. You don't slide a yard short of the goal line. You dive for it.
Yeah.
And I think that it was mentioned because the next time it came up, you see Lenore's kind of slow down, but then he just plows over this guy for the first down.
And I think like it's just a catch-22 where it's you want him to protect the ball. You don't want him to do anything stupid. And again, I think that's going to come with time where you're just going to have better awareness of where you're at on the field. And I don't know if this has always been the rule, but has it always been the rule that where you start sliding is where you're down at?
Right. Yeah.
I don't feel like it's always been that way. I could be completely
wrong.
It
has been that way. Yes.
Okay.
Wherever you start the slide, that's where you're down at.
Yeah. I don't know, but it's almost like, well, if he does go forward that extra yard, and I know it's third down, but he takes a huge hit and he fumbles the ball, and it's like, well, okay. So it's almost like a danged if you do, danged if you don't.
Yeah, you kind of got to
have better awareness.
Yeah. But see, the one that he did slide in, he could have easily just kind of dove to the left for 2 yards. And again, you don't want to take a bunch of hits, but there are some situations like, okay, we need the first down here. I think we ended up getting it, but it's just that extra play that you got to kind of put your best fourth down play in and that kind of deal. So, but I think that it was talked about on the sideline.
Yeah.
Because again, the next time it came up, you could tell like he realized the situation he was in.
Yeah.
And he did what he needed to do to get the first down. Again, not a huge complaint.
Yeah.
But if you're just looking for something, and during the game, at that time, I think it was either tied or it was like 14 to.
I think you're about to
10
take
maybe.
one I was going to say.
Which one? The kickoff?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And you didn't even see it to start with.
No,
because I was
walked away
texting
for a
you and I was
second.
like, "What? I mean, what is that? Like, what are we even doing?" You were like, "I completely."
And I think that's something that Beamer has to be better about. Where you look at Dan, excuse me, Dan Campbell in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. Like, he's a very aggressive coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been them against the world. They're always hunting. And I don't know who I heard say this, but like, you're now the hunted. You don't have to do these things anymore. And with Beamer doing, I don't even know what the purpose of that kick was supposed to be. I didn't see it, but why even do it? Like, Kroger kicks out of bounds. It gives them, you basically give them a 10-yard head start.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the play where they bust out that big run. And now that could have happened anyways.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at it, like, why do that? Like, that's something that could be a complete game changer. And you go back to the Ole Miss game where we decide to go for it on the fourth down in our own territory, and you just set the defense up for failure. And because Ole Miss scored right after that.
Yeah,
and
I'm trying to remember when it exactly happened. We had just scored, obviously, because we're kicking it off. And you say,
it was in the first quarter because, or excuse me, it was in the second quarter. I apologize, because A&M scored 17 points in the second quarter.
It was, and
some
people may look at it and say, well, it's only 10 yards, but it's also just a slight momentum change, because we just scored. If you kick it, let's just say they bring it out the end zone, you tackle them at the 15 or the 18, and you set them even further back. Or even if they do a touchback and they're at the 25, it's still in their mind like, okay, they just scored. We haven't really been able to do anything. But then you just give that one little inkling of, okay, we can do something here. They kind of spotted us 10 yards, and then, like you said, they just bust a long run.
You don't ever want to give a team any momentum.
No, and there was no need for it right there.
Wounds.
There was just no need for anything cute.
And I do think that's something Beamer needs to be better about. And that's when I think I made the comment to you about, we've got like a JV coaching staff where it's just make it like, there was no reason to make that. There was no reason to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind aggressiveness, but it's all about a time and place. And these games, you don't take the points when you can get the points. Don't get cute with going forward on a 2-point conversion. Now, if you're up by 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns in the third quarter, I'm fine with that. Right. But when you've got a top 10 team in the country coming off a huge win against LSU the previous week, you don't want to give them, you don't want to make it easy for them. And I felt like if we ended up losing, that's something that would have came back to, like, and something somebody I definitely think should have asked in his post-game press conference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stupid. Like, it's stuff you don't need. Like, you harp on the players, but as a head coach, you have to learn, and you can't keep doing those like small things to be, quote unquote Beamer ball, where just play football. Like, don't get cutesy with it, especially on a kickoff, unless you're like going for an onside kick. But like, I don't even think that was what they were supposed to be doing there.
Like, if you wanted to do something cute or something like that, do the onside kick like Pat McAfee did, where he just kind of squibs it 10 yards to himself. Just whatever, something like that. But a drop kick, and it wasn't even, like you said, there was no chance for us to even. I don't understand that call at all, because he kicks it downfield. You kick it downfield, you're just hoping that they just don't pick the ball up or something. Like, it made no sense. Like that.
Yeah.
That call, there was nothing about it that made sense. And I wish somebody would ask, because I would have loved to hear the explanation of why they chose to do that.
And this isn't a gripe, but I'm going to give you this platform because what was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago,
You want me to walk it back?
you made the comment that Lenore Sellers ain't got it. That's not something that can be taught or learned. And I'm sorry if I'm putting words in your mouth. The floor is yours to kind of.
Well, here's the
And
thing.
if
He
you
hasn't
would have
been
just
in
said
that
like,
situation yet, again, like he was in Alabama. He's been put into good situations. But I will say, yes, he is showing signs that he could be. Again, I still don't think if we got into a game like the Alabama one where we can say, okay, Lenore, it's on your shoulders.
mm-hmm.
I still wouldn't have 100% trust. Would you? I would have a little bit more trust than before, but to say like, okay, yeah, he's got us right here.
Yeah, but I
He's
mean that's
getting
what's going to
there.
happen with the true freshman or
He's getting
redshirt
there.
freshman.
And the good thing is we've had a solid running game that's allowed him to kind of play a little bit more free and not feel like it's all on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it has slowed down for him a lot more.
And he even
Very
said that
quickly.
in the post game,
Yeah.
his post game presser, where it's starting to slow down, and that's going to happen. Like you look at, and this is just my opinion. People may disagree with it, but I think probably the best quarterback to ever come out of South Carolina is Connor Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you look at the type of leader he was and how he was his entire career at South Carolina, he wasn't a great passer his first year or two.
Yeah.
He was not. He was awful.
Right.
But that's stuff that you learn and grow with, and that's just stuff you're going to have to. Unfortunately, you're going
And
to
he's
deal with
kind
some
of in the
growing
same
pains.
situation that Shaw was, where he came in and he had a good defense that's going to allow him time to, yeah, if you make
And
a
we had
mistake,
Marcus Lattimore,
yeah,
at the running back
another
position.
good running back. So it's slowed down. And I even said this. I was like, we just don't have time for him to be a slow grower into being that guy. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like that he's grown quickly. I didn't say that he couldn't be. I said you just got to do it fast. You got to. We don't have time to slow grow. And it seems like between the Oklahoma game, a bye week, and then this game, he's grown quickly. But again,
Yeah.
he also hasn't been thrown into the situation where like, hey, game's on the line. We need you to.
Oh boy, I think we lost Steven. But I'm gonna kind of piggyback off what he said, where we haven't really, outside the Alabama game, we haven't really been put in a situation to where we've had to depend on Lenoris to be that guy. And honestly, I think he did do it a little bit in the Alabama game. But that's just, you're gonna have to deal with the ups and downs and the growing pains of having a freshman quarterback leading your team. So, but again, the strong win for South Carolina, a 44-20 win over the Texas A&M Aggies, coming in ranked number 10. Big win for Shane Beamer and company. So Steven just hopped off. We'll try to get him back on. But we're going to jump right into the Clemson Louisville matchup. Clemson falls 33-21. And this was a game, and as y'all come to know watching this show, South Carolina and Clemson were playing at the same time on Saturday. I did kind of watch a little bit of it, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But I think I see a lot of Clemson fans talking about this. It is, you back? You good?
Hey, I don't know
Okay.
what.
We're on the Clemson
Okay.
Louisville game now. But like I was saying, I think this is one of probably the toughest losses at least in recent memory for Dabo and company and the Clemson Tigers, because it just was not a good game. Like, I mean, you've got they allowed 2 blocked field goals. They honestly, outside the first quarter, they didn't score again until late in the fourth quarter. And I feel like this is and you can't even, like, outside the Georgia game, Clemson, and I know they can't control who they play, but they haven't played anybody. And I feel like a lot of people kind of wrote off Louisville going into this game, but Louisville really just had their way with the Clemson Tigers all night.
What's crazy is if you just took the score away and you just looked at team stats,
Yeah.
you would say, okay, Clemson dominated this game. They had more yards, more passing yards, more rushing yards, more first downs, more fourth down, better third down efficiency. They
Yep.
had 101 plays to 59.
Yeah.
They almost they almost doubled the amount of plays. They had less penalties and zero turnovers, and then the time of possession was 37, almost 38 minutes to 22 minutes. Like if you just look at that, you say Clemson blew them out. So
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch it obviously, but just from what I've been told, they just came out completely flat out the bye week, kind of similar to how South Carolina did against Ole Miss. But the big thing is what we've said all year is Clemson hasn't played anyone. Like
Nope.
they started getting all this hype, and Kate started getting in the Heisman conversation and
Mhm.
all this, but like they haven't beaten a team with a winning record all year. And then you finally play a team of decent
That's somewhat of a
competition.
pulse.
Yeah, and you pretty much get embarrassed on your own field. So, we've said it all year. Congrats, it's another win. A win's a
Yeah.
win. You play who you got to play. You play who's on your schedule.
Mhm.
But we really don't know about this team. And then we kind of pinpointed this game and said Louisville's probably going to be their first true test to show us, like, okay, is Clemson truly back?
Plus Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah, or is this going to be, show us who they really are? And I think that a lot of fans are seeing this is who they really are.
A lot, and the one thing Clemson fans always get on Gamecock fans about is fans leaving early. Fans were leaving early in the third quarter. You had the student section for Clemson throwing bottles on the field, and I think this is just a tired narrative because everybody always brings up. Even the announcers brought it up, where the transfer portal, and I think this goes well beyond the transfer portal, where and it's I guess the great thing about the For You page on Twitter is it will show, like, I see a lot of Clemson stuff on there now, just following stuff for the show. And Louisville did a great job. I think it was against Clemson's right tackle where they were just bullying him and pushing him straight into Cade. And it didn't always result in a sack because I think Louisville only had 2 sacks on the night, but it forced Cade out of the pocket and he just really wasn't making great decisions. And, they didn't really have many plays down the field on a consistent basis. Like clearly they put up numbers, but it's getting in those short yardage situations or getting in the red zone where the field condenses and you don't have the luxury of letting a fast receiver just run directly down the field and try to catch the ball. So I don't know. I don't really know how to read Clemson because, like I said, the 2 games they've lost, they have not looked good. It's one thing like if you just get in a shootout or if it's like a defensive game and you just end up losing, like the South Carolina Alabama game. It's just been 2 complete opposites for the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah.
The first quarter they did good against Georgia, but the second quarter is where it all fell apart. And I don't really know what to make of this team. And I don't know if you learn a lot about your team when you hit rock bottom. And I don't know, like it's tough to get a read on Clemson.
Yeah, it's and the thing is because they haven't played anybody, and whatever we say it, you got to play who you play. But the thing is nobody has been able to get a real good read on them. They've climbed up in the polls just because a lot of it's just because their name and their history. But then you finally see them play some competition, and then it's the same thing with Georgia. It's not quite as bad as the Georgia game, but it's just like, okay, they're not that good. Like, okay, you're beating these bad teams, and you're doing it handily, which you should. But then it's like the first time that you play a team that's, like you said, has a pulse. It's not like Louisville, some world beater.
No.
And they just come out and kind of embarrass you on your home field.
Yeah.
And again, I think that, like you said, just even outside of the actual game on the field, it was just a bad night in general for just Clemson, the team, the university, just because
they try to pull a Texas.
All the things that they say that they don't do, and they're so much better at you at not doing this. Our fans stay to the end. We don't do these dirty things. Like Okay,
Yeah.
your fans left in the third quarter. Your student section is throwing stuff on the field.
Mhm.
You're getting embarrassed on the field. Like
Yep.
it was just an awful night. And especially like they're coming out and they're just trying to hype themselves up. Like, all right, we're going back to the playoffs. We're about to win the ACC, and then it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Like you
Yeah.
could still win the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, I think they played themselves unless they unless they end up winning the ACC, which I mean, it doesn't look like Miami and SMU is going to slow down at all.
Yeah,
But obviously, you never know. Um, but Clemson, I think, definitely played themselves out of a potential college football playoff spot unless they win the ACC championship.
yeah, and
Which
it's gonna be tough because, like I said, SMU they got Boston College, Virginia, and Cal, and I don't foresee them losing to any of them.
I feel like Boston College could be a trap game for SMU. You just never know. But Virginia and Cal,
Yeah,
Virginia, I don't think so. Cal, you never know as well.
yeah, and then Miami has Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. I don't, which Miami had a little scare against Duke there for a minute,
Yeah,
but I don't foresee
Miami's
either one of those losing.
Miami's just on borrowed time. I feel where they've got a generational offense, but they've got a terrible defense. I really like Mario Cristobal. I think is one of the most overrated coaches in America. They're just very lucky that they've got a huge NIL fund to go out and get these big time players. But yeah, man, I I was watching the game and the Clemson game was on one TV and our game was on the other TV, and obviously we didn't spend too much time, or I didn't spend too much time watching it, but I feel like it was just coming for the Tigers, where
Mhm.
they were riding the everybody was saying Cade Klubnik, the Heisman Trophy winner, this is the real Cade, and then you go out and put out a performance against a inferior opponent, the Louisville Cardinals. I mean, Cade was 33 of 56, 228 yards, one touchdown. Maffa had 171 yards rushing with two touchdowns. Um, but again, I don't know. Like I feel like it's the same stuff with Cade going against better teams, I
Yeah,
guess, where he's not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's all the stuff Clemson fans were talking between weeks 2 and 9 are just out the window now
yeah, and
because
most people that outside of their fan base were just like, "We'll see." I mean, because nobody really knows. Like, there hasn't been a game where you can pinpoint and just say, like, "Oh yeah, that was a solid win." Like,
yeah,
this is who we are now. And then, like I said, you finally play a team with a pull. And here's the thing: like, it's not Virginia Tech isn't going to be just no cakewalk. I mean, that's a
no,
tough place to go and play in
yeah,
Blacksburg, and they got to go on the road after the, like you said, like you're going to really see, I guess now because they're coming off a loss which people thought they should have won. Like, how do
yeah,
they respond? And then you got to go on the road to a pretty tough environment. Like, it could snowball here because if
yeah,
they don't come out and show up and beat Virginia Tech, if they lose to Virginia Tech, then they got to go on the road again the following week to Pitt,
yeah.
which
Which
isn't going to
Pitt
be
got
an
beat
easy
pretty bad
game.
by SMU, but I think that just shows how good SMU is. I
Yeah,
feel.
I agree.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's going to be an interesting next two games for the Clemson Tigers. Both games are on the road. Um, how are they going to respond coming off this? I wouldn't say embarrassing loss. I don't know. I would say embarrassing loss
Yeah,
because Clemson fans
just
put
as because of the
themselves on a
stuff around it. Yeah,
Clemson fans
just
put themselves on a pedestal where they think they're the the example for college football
mhm.
excellence in every facet of the game, whether it's running down the hill, their fans never leaving and stuff like that. I feel like Dabo is probably going to open up his phone lines for his call-in show and let Tyler from Spartanburg call in again. Tyler
He's
from
got that.
Spartanburg.
Yeah, he's got to have
Um,
some kind of
so
spark for the team.
yeah, I don't know. Again, you learn a lot about your teams when they face adversity and how are they going to
Mhm.
respond. They came out strong against Appalachian State after the Georgia loss, which Appalachian State is not Virginia Tech. They're not Pittsburgh, but still came out, had a strong performance. But this is, I think, their first true like road test
Yeah,
for being on the road. Like Florida State, they are just a dumpster fire. Wake Forest, they're essentially a high school team. That's not a tough environment to play in. So we'll see. Virginia Tech is 5-4,
yeah. I'm
coming
trying to
off a
pull
loss to
their uh,
Syracuse.
their schedule.
What's that?
I'm trying to look and see who they played. Like Virginia Tech, one of their losses is to a pretty good Vanderbilt team. Let's see, they
They
lost to
lost to Miami and
Rutgers.
Rutgers and
But here's the
Syracuse.
thing: like Miami, they lost to Miami by 4.
People argue that they should have beat Miami.
Yeah, so here's like the losses that Virginia Tech have. They're not
Yeah,
terrible. For the most part, they're not terrible losses. You lost to a good Vanderbilt team,
yeah,
and you lost to a top 5 team in Miami
yeah,
at Miami in a game that you probably should have won. Like,
yeah,
and now you get a chance. They're 2 teams coming off a loss. But the thing is, you're at Virginia Tech, so that's going
yeah,
to kind of lean towards them. I haven't seen the line for this game yet.
yeah. It
Um,
right now it's Clemson -6.5. So we'll go ahead and hop into kind of preview this weekend's games. We'll just stick with Clemson. Clemson's on the road at Virginia Tech. Set for 3:30 kickoff on ESPN. Like I said, Clemson -6.5. I don't know what to make of this
yeah,
game. I think Clemson wins, but again, I don't know. Like it could be a game they could lose, but it could be a game they win by 4 touchdowns. You just
yeah.
never know.
You really don't. I mean, because again, I don't know a whole lot about Virginia Tech. I mean, just looking at their schedule, they don't have a lot of bad losses. Um,
I
Vanderbilt,
mean,
good team.
yeah,
Miami, good team. Syracuse is 6-2. I
yeah.
mean, and then they played
You look
at
at
Syracuse.
Syracuse's loss to Pittsburgh. That was pretty tough. Their quarterback just played an
Yeah, but
awesome.
I think Pittsburgh's a decent team, though.
Yeah,
Again, but they played at Syracuse and at Miami. Like their losses are on the road.
yeah.
So
But
I don't
again,
know. Like I said, we
it's like
just
I
don't
said
know.
earlier in the Carolina game where these tough atmospheres are completely different during the day compared to at night.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's one positive the Clemson Tigers have going for them is it is an afternoon game. You know, it does get darker earlier now, but by the time it gets dark up there, it's probably going to be the second half, and so it's not like a true, in my opinion, and I'll say that for any team. Like I'm glad the away games Carolina's had this year truly were at 12 o'clock kickoffs. So
mm-hmm.
I think that benefited us. I think it being an afternoon game is going to benefit the Clemson Tigers, but we'll see how they respond. I mean,
Yeah,
it's they're not going up against an Appalachian State. They're going up against an ACC opponent, a traditional, not so much in the past decade where they've been a good team, but it's going to be a good test. Like I said, it's a road game, so we'll see. I mean, I think Clemson wins, but I wouldn't be surprised if Clemson loses as well.
yeah, I agree. I think they win. I don't think that they're going to blow them out. I think it'll probably have to be a last minute thing.
Yeah,
But if they lose this, I mean, it could snowball here.
yeah.
Especially having to
This
go
fan
on the
base may
road
turn on
again.
Dabo very quickly if they lose this weekend.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
he's already like this is never a job he'll get fired from. He's won 2 national championships at Clemson, but as the college football landscape has changed, and it's like that old saying, like you either adapt or you die. When college basketball was going to the one and done era,
Mm-hmm.
all these like Coach K, they adapted, and I think it was Bo Ryan was the coach at Wisconsin where he didn't want to do that, and now Wisconsin is in the shadows now.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about Wisconsin basketball anymore. So I feel like that's always the thing that gets brought up when Clemson loses and they look the way they did on Saturday, where it's like, Dabo's inability to adapt to the current era of college football, and you can agree with it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But that just seems to be the thing that keeps recirculating when Clemson has games like this. So what'll probably happen, Clemson's going to win by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Dabo's going to give a spiel after the game.
The thing is, like,
It's what he always does.
They're not getting in unless they win the ACC, and it doesn't seem like they're going to get into the ACC championship.
No, they're not making the college. Like I said, unless they win the like you said, the ACC championship, because when if you're vying for an at-large bid and you look at their opponents,
mm-hmm.
it's not that good where you take a 2-loss. I don't know. Let's just say, for example, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Not even going to the SEC, and you look at their losses and the teams they've played, and you compare it to who Clemson's lost. and who they've won against.
Yeah.
So it's
I'll be interested to see what the committee says tonight when they do the first rankings, if they
here's
even
my
mention something like that,
here's
and
my thing.
also just to see how they talk about a team like South Carolina.
I honestly, I don't think there should be rankings like the college football playoff rankings because I don't know, like it should be a blank canvas every week because
Yeah.
it's completely different. Like the first the 1 through 4 seeds are not like you just have to win your conference championship.
Yeah.
So even if, like, let's just say Texas A&M makes it to the SEC championship game, they win, but they've got 2 losses. They're a top 4 seed, and so now you're going to argue. I don't know. It's not like a set formula anymore where it's like, okay, this team looks like the 1 seed, this team looks like the 2, 3, 4 seed,
Yeah.
but now it's like 1 through 4. You don't know who it's going to be. Like they could be Oregon could be the number 1 ranked team in the country, but if they don't win the Big Ten, they're not going to be one of the top 4 seeds. They're going to be 5 through 12. And so
I think the only benefit is for these teams that kind of know, like, we have an outside shot of getting into the playoffs, but it's not going to be because we're going to have to get that at-large bid. So let's kind of see where they rank us. Are they putting us at 15? Because if they're putting us at 15 and we string out some more wins, like we might get a chance at this at-large. But if we're not even in it right now, like, obviously things can change week to week, especially for a team, and I don't think it'll happen. But I mean, a case could be made for a team like South Carolina, because if you end up winning out and you're 9-3, you got to win against a top 10 opponent. It would be another ranked win this week. If you win this week, more than likely a ranked win against Missouri. Like, if you're rattling those off, if the committee wants to say, we want to put in the best 12 teams at the moment, not how did they play week 3? Because if you look back and you just say, okay, who's playing the best football right now to give us the best playoffs, playoff games?
Yeah.
You're going to have to look at teams that they may have had some tough losses, like the LSU, like the Alabama loss, where you can say, okay, they should have won those games, but then right now they look better than they did then, even when they should have won those games. You could definitely make a case now for these teams that might have multiple losses.
Well, and so it's honestly, you're going to have a automatic bid from the ACC and an automatic bid from the Big 12. So the way those conferences are looking, and I know we weren't talking much on national scale, and we'll get to the South Carolina Vanderbilt game here in just a second, but you're really looking at the way it's looking. The ACC will they could very well potentially get 2 teams if SMU wins, but the Big 12 more than likely will only get 1 team. So that's 5 teams right there. And so the other 7 a lot of people can make the argument they're going to come from just the Big 10 and the SEC by themselves. So it's going to be interesting. So, I mean, you're obviously, if South Carolina were to win out, we have a case, but it's okay. Like, who else are we going up against?
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, Alabama may have 2 losses and South Carolina may have 3 losses, but it's like, how do you pick and choose? Like, okay, are they a better is a South Carolina a better 3-loss team than Alabama as a 2-loss team? But then you've got the head-to-head matchup. Well, it's just a multitude of factors. And when you add the team element into these decision makings, you never know what you're going to get, because Stephen may have a different opinion on a team than I do, and it's like there's no set formula. It's almost like a blank canvas every week with the committee.
To me, it would come down to who's playing the best right now, who's going to give us the best game in a college football playoff. Because if you have the 3-loss team, let's just say it comes down to an Alabama or LSU versus a 3-loss South Carolina. Well, if they're just not looking good and barely scraping by, and you have South Carolina's rolling off big wins, who's playing the best right now? Who do you think would match up the best against these other teams?
You
also got to take into account injuries. You don't know who's going to get injured. You may, let's just say Alabama does finish with 2 losses, but let's say they lose Milroe. Let's say they lose a couple of key guys. You kind of get into that whole thing with, like, Florida State last year. We're like, they're undefeated. They're the ACC champion, but they're not going to be able to beat any of these teams. They're just not healthy enough. And it might be unfortunate, but those are also things that are going to have to be factored in.
Yeah, I don't think it serves any purpose with doing these rankings prior to announcing
And
who's making
rankings are all over the place. You
yeah,
have the
because
AP that doesn't even have South Carolina in, but then
yeah,
they run the metric that they used to run for the BCS, and technically South Carolina would be 13th in the nation right now.
exactly. So it's like, but in the losses that we have, especially if you look at our loss against Ole Miss, we did not look good. You
Yeah,
look at our win against Old Dominion, we really didn't look good at all, but our defense bailed us out. So yeah, it's such a tough conversation to have because there's so many factors, and again, you don't have a computer generated ranking anymore.
yeah,
You've got the human element, and me and you have different opinions on who the top teams are, and I guarantee you for all those members on that committee are the same way.
yeah,
So we'll have that another time. We may talk more into that on Sunday's episode, but
yeah.
let's go ahead and preview the South Carolina Vanderbilt game. It's kickoff scheduled for 4:15 p.m. So it'll be 3:15 Vanderbilt time. South Carolina currently 3.5 point favorite. Vanderbilt is ranked 24th in the country. I don't know. I can't get a good read on Vanderbilt because
I can't
it's
either.
not going to be a tough environment to play in. Like it's probably going to be a majority South Carolina fans. Like
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt's not a place you go in and it's a tough environment. 9 times out of 10, depending on who they're playing, the away team is going to have more fans than Vanderbilt. But
Yeah,
again, you have Diego Pavia for Vanderbilt. They've got a solid offense, but I don't really know what to make of them. Like I'm not worried about his ability to make plays is what concerns me. But with the defense we have is what gives me hope for Saturday. And
mm-hmm.
I do think we end up winning, but I think it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah. The matchup predictor, the FPI has us at 58%. Again, I trust our defense completely. And the offenses look better. If you can continue to be consistent like you have been the past 2 games on offense and maybe even get better, because it looks like they've progressed each week. So, yeah, not a tough place to go and play. So it's not like you got to go and play at, Alabama again or if you had to go to like Texas A&M, somewhere like that. So you probably will have more fans there. It's just, how do you come off of – you can't have a hangover. You can't, have this big win, be riding all this confidence. Yeah, and then come in – because here's the thing. It's not even like a trap game because Vanderbilt is a good team. They're ranked.
Yeah.
They're 6-3. They've beat, Alabama. They should have beat Texas.
And their 3 losses, they've lost by a combined 10 points. They lost to Georgia State by 4, lost to Missouri by 3, and lost to Texas by 3.
Yeah,
so
this is and I think that probably Vanderbilt fans, the few that they have that are diehard fans, are probably trying to make the same case that South Carolina is, that they should be an outside chance of getting into the playoffs. Because if you look at our resumes, they're pretty much similar. We've had top 10 wins. We've had bad losses. We've had losses we've had wins against teams that we should have blown out, but we didn't. Pretty much everything kind of lines up the same as far as resume. So this will be one of the games that kind of obviously puts one team above the other in that argument. So again, I trust our defense. I think of any side of the ball for both teams, South Carolina has the edge there.
Yeah.
They're definitely the best, squad between the, 4. If you say offense, defense, it's definitely South Carolina's defense is going to be the star here.
Yeah. The key for me is just containing Diego Pavia because he really sets the tone for that offense. And that's the one player that concerns me. It's, Vanderbilt went on the road to Auburn this past weekend. And, you can talk how much ever you want about the state of Auburn football. But going into Jordan Hare Stadium is not an easy task. Won 17-7. So
I think a good thing this past week for us,
game.
The good thing for our defense this past week is we hadn't really faced one of those mobile guys in terms of quarterbacks. Milrow a little bit, but he's not one of those guys, like Pavia and them. But facing
I think
Reed,
he's better than them. I mean, at least with his legs. Yeah, I mean,
who Milrow,
Jalen Milrow. His
he didn't
legs
do it a whole
are
lot against
insane. In
us.
terms of overall quarterback play, no. But his
Yeah,
leg, the what he can do with his legs is just insane.
But outside of we haven't faced one besides, and I don't think he really ran a whole lot against us.
But when he did, he's effective with it.
Right.
And I mean, Marcel Reed was a dual threat where he got us with his legs. But the one thing with Pavia is, he's a journeyman in college football, and just what he's been able to do, for Vanderbilt this year, that's just what concerns me.
I think us facing Reed this week and kind of getting a little bit of this, seeing a little bit of that, more of that mobile guy who can beat you both ways. It's going to help our defense out a lot, because that, like I said, that was kind of the scary thing, was like how are we going to hold up against a quarterback that can run and throw?
Yeah. So, but we'll see.
I think that we win. Again, it's all going to come out to how we start, and we can't do anything stupid or cute at the beginning.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, last time we played in Vanderbilt, it was it wasn't a blowout. It was a pretty close game. So we'll see. I'm confident in us coming off our win, but again, it doesn't need to be like a trap game where we come out and look the way we did against A&M, and then come out and look the way we did against Old Dominion and Ole Miss. So, but we'll see. We'll be back for our live episode on Sundays from now on, bearing anything happening. So, Stephen, anything else before we get out of here?
I think that's it. Is this coming out today?
Probably not. No, it'll probably be tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Take care. We'll see y'all Sunday.